Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a very warm round of applause for the record-setting Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. She joins us, ma'am. Please come and take the hot chair. Ma'am, we're here, we're going to do it like a town hall, and we're absolutely delighted that you're here. Thank you so much for taking out time. Please, can we have one very warm round of applause for the Finance Minister for joining us now. Ma'am, the context for the NDTV Profit Conclave happens in a setting where India and the United States have just announced a trade deal, the joint statement put out literally hours before now. As Finance Minister, if you were to look at, say, growth numbers for this year, now that you've got these positive tailwinds that are lifting spirits, to what extent would you be willing to revise GDP growth numbers? Because you've got now this very strong tailwind, because earlier it was dragging growth down. Do you think this acts as a trigger for growth? And is that something that leads you to potentially raise the estimate of how fast you think the economy will grow? That's what I picked up from the Chief Economic Advisor. He was saying like 0.4% tailwind on account of the trade deal. What's your sense as Finance Minister responsible for our economy about how the trade deal impacts your vision and outlook towards the economy, ma'am? Welcome.
No, every trade deal is important, and it certainly lifts the spirit of the exporters and people who are looking for newer markets and so on. And if the Chief Economic Advisor has given you a number, go by that. I normally don't suggest any number. We work for it.
Interesting. You know, that's the other thing that we've seen, ladies and gentlemen, in the last several years with the Finance Minister and her top economic team, a conservatism when it comes to setting projections and growth numbers. Is that deliberate? Because one is to aim higher and then, constantly try and chase those high targets. The other is to be conservative when you're setting targets and to, delight on the upside. So is that something that you're trying to do deliberately?
I try being realistic. It may be perceived as being conservative. But I think there are areas in business and commerce which can err on the side of being conservative. Banking, finance, these are areas in which you really can't be too flamboyant, or you cannot be too over-ambitious without realizing where the facts are. So if I were to assess the numbers I've given all these years, I would say I've always been realistic.
What's keeping you up at this moment? Last year, potentially the trade turbulence, the unexpected nature of some of the comments coming globally, and therefore the impact it has on the Indian economy, the impact it has on investment outlook, would potentially have been your biggest risk factors. At this moment, as Finance Minister, what's keeping you up at night?
Well, the uncertainties have not gone away yet, particularly the external uncertainties. We keep strengthening domestically our markets, our manufacturing, the MSMEs, support agriculture, and so on. But the uncertainties from outside are still where they were. In fact, even more, I suppose, highly volatile. So that is still a concern for me.
Okay, I'm also going to get some of my colleagues to ask questions. We'll start with Shrimi Chaudhary, who covers the Finance Ministry for us. So Shrimi gets to ask the first question. Go for it, Shrimi.
Ma'am, just wanted to understand with this tariff deal in place now, we got some certainty here. Is it a bit perplexing or confusing for you that with the kind of growth number we are estimating and we projecting, still we are seeing the FIIs outflows, anemic FDIs, I would say. Is it confusing for you?
Seema, I think I answered this question even earlier. See, the recent couple of years have revealed something which probably was lying under the carpet, but then obviously now they're all coming out. And I'm referring to the fact that fund flows internationally seem to have more than just the commercial considerations. economies are doing well, you have some economies doing really well and sustaining their performance over the years, then you have every such indicator which should draw funds towards it really being on an uptick. Even then, the flow is not a flow sometimes. I wouldn't say it's a trickle, but sometimes it doesn't flow as much as you expect them to. So I strongly believe, and there are many who would agree, and there's very little reason to suspect that this particular assumption is wrong, or this particular not assumption, my conclusion. Fund flows have more than just the commercial interest in their minds.
So you're saying fund
There's
flows
something
are
else.
as political as they are economic?
Strategic interests also seem to be one of the very important factors. Otherwise, the economic survey was right when it said every macroeconomic indicator for India is at its recent best. And it's been so literally for the last 4 or 5 years.
But can
And
I
they
can I counter argue to say, because my batchmates who are investment bankers in New York or London, and even if they're of Indian origin and very bullish on the Indian economy, and I ask them, what's your outlook to India? At this time, India doesn't have much of an AI play. So that's one thing which holds flow. Secondly, the rupee has been depreciating versus the dollar. And by the time they take the money back, because for them, it's about how much returns can they generate sitting in New York. In that context, they're upset still with the long-term capital gains tax which is imposed, saying that impacts to some extent they feel their outlook to India and the depreciation of the rupee versus the dollar, and the fact that India, in their view, doesn't have much of an AI play, which is where a lot of the funds are going at the moment.
Rahul, I don't deny whoever has given you this assessment. It is probably their own assessment, and they perhaps deal with their funds with these factors before them. But there are equally big fund managers and people like JP Morgan their global head who comes to India and would say probably not what they have said, and they would say India is the place to be, India is the place to do this, and so on. Now on the AI play, I'm not convinced about that, because AI for every country has its own little calibration. Over and above the AI which is globally required, we have the manpower which is absolutely at it, at a high end. We are trying to give that kind of an exposure to AI even for the young fellows who come out of the college or from higher secondary, each for their levels. So on AI, I'm not sure, probably excluding China, I'm not sure if there's any country which is gearing up its manpower to be adept at AI as we are doing. And I can say this with a sense of confidence because you hear it from people who are looking for talented people who can be at various stages of AI.
No, their concern about the public markets is the lack of an AI play in terms of, because a lot of the funds have gone towards the big companies which are at this moment building the data centers or the chips.
It's money coming only for AI. Come on, Rahul.
A lot of the flows have been in that direction over the past.
Never mind. You can always score a point on that. But I think India has still a lot of macroeconomic factors based on which till 2 years ago fund would come. But after a certain tightening up on certain other considerations, inclusive of sanctions which are happening, where tools are getting weaponized if a country asserts its sovereignty.
I think that's a very important point the finance minister makes. And of course, sitting on the sidelines of a match and doing commentary is the easiest thing for you and me. But once you're in and that's what you pick up, that's very important. The fact that flows are not just flows.
I'll add to it. Countries like Canada, their pension funds, countries like Norway, their sovereign wealth funds, and so many others have been in touch with me, and I am actually being invited to go there, and I shall be going sooner. Are they also not affected by the AI consideration? They shouldn't be calling us at all. So different reasons prevail for different funds, specifically in the last minute, to say, all right, I won't go to India or I will go to India. The larger consideration is the return on your investment. India does give it, and that's why many of them booked their profit and went out. And you would naturally assume that return on investment is the primary consideration on which money flows.
Of course.
But no. So what else is there? Something beyond it.
Kahani mein geopolitical twist. Okay, I want to take a question from Tamanna Inamdar, who runs NDTV Profit. Where is she? There she is. Can we have a mic brought up to her, please? Tamanna, go for it. And the others can also keep their questions ready and warm, and we'll try and give as many an opportunity.
Important point of maybe fund flows being used as a geopolitical tool, like we've seen tariffs being weaponized. But I want to ask you a question from the domestic market point of view. There were lots of hopes for some kind of relief on long-term capital gains tax, with the thinking that it may not happen. The STT increase did see some reactions from the market. Just want to understand your thinking, because when there have been increases in the past, people have still continued to trade in large numbers. Is this truly prohibitive, and will there be more action going forward if you want to control this satta, as you called it?
I'm not sure it will be prohibitive. But that doesn't mean I'm indicating that I'll come with more. Not at all. But if you look at it, I have not touched anything other than the futures and options. I'm not indicating I will. I'm not touching anybody. And the reason why we wanted to bring in this little increase was more for deterrent purposes rather than for revenue purposes. And it's not going by anecdotal examples. Even SEBI in its study found that 90% of them who engaged in futures and options lost money.
Ma'am, can we engage in a philosophical debate on this? I see where you've come out on this debate, that by raising STT, you hope to deter active participation by small day traders in the futures and options segment. Fair enough. The counter to this is, these are adults, they're spending their money, they'll burn their fingers, they'll learn their lesson and they'll back off. By government intervention of this form, you don't necessarily impact behavior. That, for example, they'll find other ways. We saw this with crypto, multiple other geographies, VPNs being deployed, the same purchases in cryptocurrencies happening outside the Indian geography. So the government loses out on that tax as far as behavior is concerned, but the behavior doesn't change. Yet your effort is to signal deterrence. To what extent do you think it works?
That's why I said it's not as if this is going to be the one pill which will solve the speculative tendencies. I'm not suggesting that it is the one and only thing which can address it, and therefore I've done it. But equally, it's also something which very many people have said, is the government going to just look the other way, even as this is going on? And if study-based responses are coming, wouldn't you want to act? Other than the regulator themselves acting. SEBI would do its own and I would do my own. SEBI 2 days ago has said, no, we don't intend doing anything at this moment. And I'm saying I have no further intentions of doing anything more. We'll have to try.
What's your assessment of the efficacy of your interventions on cryptocurrency and real money gaming? Has it had the impact you thought it would?
At least I'm trailing them, am I not? At least I know which are the ones who are going and where is it going. At least I know to track it.
But when I speak to young companies, they say, we could have had these kind of valuations, we could have built this business, it's going to geographies where it is allowed, they are making the money and we are losing out in these technologies and in these sectors.
Let's understand that. When if it is all of them are going out and I have to get them back because they are Indians, and if technology will still not defy borders, I can get them back. The same business from here with no borders because technology, or the same business going elsewhere because no borders will serve this country as well. It's the truth. Technology doesn't care for your geographical borders. So in order to keep them here, I have to compromise on tax is one thing, and second, compromise on even detecting what is happening there. Automatic disclosure is not happening. People are not saying, okay, I'm going to go onto a platform and play with cryptocurrency. Are they going to say it to me?
No, but those companies will be here. Those companies, their databases, they'll be
Very
here.
well, I've heard this argument and there are still a lot of companies here, despite my TDS and TCSs.
Okay. I'm going to get Devna Mehra to ask the next question. Can we have a mic brought across to her, please? Yes. Go on, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening, Honorable Finance Minister. And even though I'm from the capital markets, I'm all for this STT increase that you've done. My tribe might lynch me for that, because it is not just that 90% of the people lose money. SEBI data shows the less educated lose more money. People earning less than 5 lakhs lose more money. People outside metros lose more money. So it is really the people who can afford the least who are losing the most money. And the wonderful part of the budget, of course, was that you've maintained the capex, which is both for capacity building besides the direct impact
Question.
on... Yeah, I'm just coming to the questions because that's deriving out of the capex. Which is both for the listed space and otherwise. But on a lot of the revenue expenditure side, I see that you've budgeted either a very low increase or even a decline. So what is changing in the economy that enables you to do that?
Not changing in the economy, it's also since the 14th Finance Commission, 14th, 15th and now the 16th, an assessment of the schemes, assessment of some of the revenue expenditure has been going on. So if allocations are lesser, it's also because I'm entering a new Finance Commission cycle. And I'm also entering a new Finance Commission where some of the orientation towards how to fund schemes are also being discussed with the states. So many of the things which were long overdue are being done now.
Okay.
That may not be the answer for every specific head of account on which come under the revenue, but principles like that govern us in starting from a low number. If necessary, we'll increase it as we go along.
So it's like a zero-based budget for many of those things, are you saying?
Somewhat, not really, but yes, somewhat.
Because the subsidies have also come down significantly in the...
Subsidies are coming down in some, going up in some others.
Yeah, I was just talking the total, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to get Vasudha Venugopal, editor for politics, to ask a question because we're also heading into election season in states which are very close to the finance minister. Vasudha, go for it.
Ma'am, I can't not ask you a political question. You've always been right on Tamil Nadu. I know the DMK has been critical of the budget, and you've said that, it's the only state to have two corridors, the defense and the high speed. How equipped do you think the NDA is today in Tamil Nadu to dislodge the DMK? Do you see a part of the anti-incumbency votes also going to Vijay and TVK?
Well, it will be a strong fight. The NDA alliance, I think, is intact and strong, and if anything, it's moving in a very concerted fashion. So that's on the one side. On the other, the ruling DMK cannot be confident, and that's not me assessing. Their conduct in the last 1 month shows that despite 5 years of what they claim as a very good 5 years, we've governed well, we had this, we had that, they are completely appearing nervous. And why do I say that? The kind of statements coming from their ministers, the kind of freebies, fresh freebies which they're going to give, and also suddenly all their ministers also going from one temple to another. These sort of things are so betraying of the nervousness which is set in the DMK. That's one thing. And second, a strong ruling party in Tamil Nadu, one is seen from both the sides of, meaning as a non-political voter of in Tamil Nadu and also coming out of it. The tendency would be to say that Tamil people have been taken care of, good welfare measures have reached, this is, education is taken care of, industries come, we are doing this. The narrative wouldn't be center versus state for a state election. There have been state elections alongside a Lok Sabha, then of course you will talk about both. Otherwise you will get a feeling that is Tamil Nadu so immune that it doesn't want to talk about anything to do with the center or the national politics. That's how the environment used to be. Now it's more, hit at Modi, say that the center is not doing anything to us, rather than talk about your local, which is your usual forte. So that narrative is also changing, making me feel that the DMK believes that no longer can it get vote talking just about Tamil Nadu's developmental activities, which they say they are very proud of. All right. Even worse, the resorting to the original so-called Dravidian agenda, Tamil, we are very different from the center cannot oppress us, they are also back. If you are confident on your track record, you won't go to your pet themes, which were necessary like early 60s, 70s, you had to do it because you were pushing the Congress out. Today the Congress has given it to you in a platter that even Congress is not interested in standing up to you. They are divided completely, and just a couple of months before an election, and on this I think I want the media to work more. Your alliance partner is looking for partners elsewhere and saying we are not sure whether we want to be with you. Your partner, you are in government, you are in power. A partner is telling you, look, you may come back to power, but wait, I'm not with you. And who's this partner? Who's never formed a government in Tamil Nadu for the last 60 years, despite being so-called national party, despite a party which should have carried the national agenda, spoken for India and Tamil Nadu. No, it was happily sort of sitting and enjoying itself, having one MPs or MLAs through an alliance with a local party. So that party is deserting you, and you're not able to claim your 5-year legacy. What an amazing situation. But no, the questions are asked of BJP and NDA. Ask the ruling party, why would you be in such a mess if 5 years of golden rule had happened? That itself indicates Tamil Nadu's election and its outcome are going to be much beyond anybody's assessment.
Ladies and gentlemen, you would have noticed the flush of energy and the level of animation when Nirmala Sitharaman pivoted from being finance minister to being spokesperson for her party on Tamil Nadu. Ma'am, you sidestepped the question on the impact of TVK Tamil star Vijay and how you think his presence as an X factor impacts this forthcoming Tamil Nadu election.
I'm not commenting on Vijay coming into politics or not. Anybody is welcome, Vijay is welcome. We need a lot of players in a democracy. Voters should have a choice.
You've seen his films? You've seen them?
No.
No time.
I'm not a movie goer so much. So
At all?
No, I don't.
And OTT?
And that's not now. I've always been like that. Except, of course, if I see something at home.
What would you see?
Well,
Like, what have you seen off late? Apart from budget papers.
No. You may not like this, but the last I saw was the animated Ramayana of the Ghibli studio, Japanese. So, but that was at home. No, so Vijay has created quite an impression on the ground. You hear conflicting reports about women in the rural areas, women in the urban. Rural, urban, Tamil Nadu is a very urban state. And women do have their own views about who's going to serve them better and so on. He will have an impact on the election. To what extent is got to be seen. And whose vote is he going to take away is a question. Is he going to take away all the supporters of DMK, particularly the women? And women in Tamil Nadu politics have a very, very powerful voice. Not because of Ladli Lakshmi or anything like that. In general, MGR or even before, women have a powerful decision-making role as regards who they would vote. And therefore, I think it's interesting time to watch Tamil Nadu elections.
Absolutely, and we love elections. So I'm going to get Veera Raghav before we pivot back to business and finance, our South editor. Veera, good.
It's great to ask you a question after many, many years, ma'am. You've made a lot of political analysis like the conversations we used to have on Tamil Nadu. I'm just going to nudge you a little bit and ask you for a prediction. give us a prediction, though you may not want to give a prediction on the economic front, but in terms of the elections, do you believe that Tamil Nadu's going to head into a potential hung assembly, perhaps for the first time after 1962? We saw one in 2006. Number one question. And the number two question, I just wanted to broad base it, how would you respond to allegations of the larger southern states feeling discriminated against, constantly being made? Do you believe that's a worry for you?
Constantly made to?
No, southern states constantly saying that they are discriminated against by the center. Would you believe that that's just merely a political allegation, or is there some economic reality to it?
They're discriminated against, no reality at all. Before the 16th Finance Commission report, they had this feeling that their good performance in terms of revenue generation, contribution to the GDP, and also population stabilization had not been recognized. I'm with them on that. I agree. I did tell many of the states that they should effectively put forth their case to the next Finance Commission, which is the 16th Finance Commission. And I guess many of them have done that. They've spoken to the Finance Commission, and Finance Commission has come up with a new weightage given to contribution to the GDP as a particular indicator in the set of considerations based on which they assess the formula. So that's worked out for them, I think, because of their putting their case forward. The Finance Commission has brought that in. So discrimination, no. Bringing in elements which are important for the states and their development parameters, yes, and that has worked with the Finance Commission. And based on that formula, from now, monies will go. But I objected to that language, despite a case which is valid, only because that's a kind of contagion which from Tamil Nadu can spread, because Tamil Nadu built on this, North is always growing and we are always, we are losing ground, if I were to not do a proper translation. I don't know how many of you will understand Tamil here. Vadakku Vaழுdu Terkku Teiyidu has been a continuous political slogan, meaning North prospers, whereas South stagnates. No, Teiyidu is, if you ragad karke kisko itna bada cheez ko itna karoge, so what is that word in Hindi? I don't know. Erosion, yes. So South erodes. That has been a political slogan in Tamil Nadu. I was surprised that that was getting some traction in the rest of the states, but I think that has been adequately answered, both by no discrimination from the center and because of facts, and the Finance Commission recognizing their contribution.
Ma'am, your approach to budget making and governance has been marked by fiscal prudence. You've reduced the fiscal deficit target from 4.4 to 4.3. You're obviously careful about how you spend money. I want to ask you what you make of political parties in election season come up with a slew of freebies. For example, 10,000 rupees were given to women in Bihar. Now there's an election in Assam and elsewhere, and all parties, including yours, are doing the same thing, especially in the context of now so much focus on the debt to GDP and your effort to bring it down. One is politician Nirmala Sitharaman, the other is Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. How do they talk to each other on this? And do you sometimes counsel your party members in states like Bihar, Assam, elsewhere, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra? And we're seeing in states like Maharashtra, they're now struggling to live up to some of those election promises. So how do you look at this very slippery slope that we are currently on when it comes to freebies?
No, first thing, if a state has resources and if they think they are able to fund it through budget, technically no one of us should have a problem. If the budgeted amount given for the freebie is shown and taken approval of through the House, their state assembly, none of us can have an objection.
No, but they cut back on revenue spends, revenue expenditure gets cut. So you're not spending on productive, say, infrastructure builds. You're just juggling within the budget by spending more on welfare and less on public infrastructure.
No, when I say if your budget can provide for it, I'm not indicating juggling. I actually mean that you have resources which can fund some of this, you're welcome to do it. And that's not at the cost of capital expenditure. They are different heads altogether. I assume the capital expenditure will happen, and over and above that, if you have resources, you should. And if you want to go ahead, please take the approval of the assembly and go ahead. But what happens is, such things get supported by borrowings which are beyond their means. And when I say beyond their means, anything that goes through the assembly or the elected representative scrutiny will bring in that element of responsibility to say, can you or can you not afford it? And the House can decide on it. Whereas when you tell the House something and not tell the House something else, and that something else goes through your state-owned public sector undertakings, then it is a sleight of hand which is wrong. And in that, even there is a margin that you can give. And what is that margin? If that public sector undertaking which is in the state government's domain earns its own revenue, it has a product to sell and it earns its money, and therefore you want to temporarily borrow from them and then serve your costs, even then it is accommodatable. But if it's a welfare board, which itself is dependent on the budgetary allocation, and it has no revenue source of its own, you still make them borrow. And then from the budgetable items, such as excise duty, you say for the next 5 years that will go for repaying that loan. That's not right. Because the elected house will have to clear what you're saying. And then there will be an element of answerability and accountability. When you're not being answerable, when you do this, it also crosses the legislated FRBM, the fiscal responsibility and budgetary management that you're committed in your house, and there is a law governing it. You exceed 3% by making all these boards and others to go out and borrow for something on which they don't have paying capacity.
Which state are you most concerned about? The
No,
state
there
of
are,
which state's
there are a
finances?
few states which have done it over and over and over again.
Which states' actions concern you the most? Punjab,
I'll not name
Telangana?
them. I'll not name them here through the media. No, I will not name them. But let me also tell you, I'm not just talking about these things and leaving it to be where it is. I've called some of these states and told them that please, your borrowing is unsustainable. I can always curb you from borrowing, that's all right, but you have these kind of unauthorized ways. But even otherwise, the earlier borrowings have been at a very high cost. You're paying 11%, 11.5%, 12% in some cases. I've invited them to sit with the finance ministry's officials and restructure their total debt basket so that the interest which they pay can be, the burden can be brought down. And I'm happy to say, I'm not doing this only for BJP states. Opposition ruled states have benefited from it. And I would say here again, not taking the name, a chief minister went to the assembly and thanked me. He doesn't belong to my party. And said, Government of India has helped us, as a result of which my burden, service burden, has come down of the loan, which I have to pay interest and everything else.
This was Revant Reddy.
I'm not naming anybody here. Okay? So, as central government, without being harsh, but yet conveying the message that debt has to be carefully managed, you can't leave intergenerational burden on our citizens. We are trying to do that.
Okay, I'm going to get Jay Kumar to ask the question. Go for it, sir.
Honorable Finance Minister, one of the liberalization moves that has not even been talked about, but probably is going to have the most amazing impact on the economy in general, is the quiet way in which banks, foreign banks have been allowed to come in and take majority stakes here. Just a rough calculation is about $10 billion of equity just in a few deals announced is the harbinger of many more things to do, many more things to come. That, along with the borrowing capability of theirs, means almost a $70-80 billion injection of credit into the system. I think the budget could have given a sign of lower interest rates by actually reducing the gross borrowing and making the rates tick lower, because the only thing, if you see inflation is low.
So question.
I'm just coming to it. This would have been a good time to signal lowering of interest rates. Maybe, I'm just qualifying that, maybe that was one thing which was missing in the budget, where a gross borrowing figure, for some reason, was higher than what the markets expected.
I agree. But I didn't have the luxury is what I want to tell you. I didn't have the luxury. If you're just looking at the numbers and saying that could be, I will agree, if ceteris paribus. But the global uncertainty since 2022 has kept the 3 Fs as a hot boiling issue. Fuel, fertilizer, food. And if this uncertainty continues, at least on 2 things, India is very dependent on external markets. Fuel, fertilizer. I import huge quantity of fertilizer. Of course, I want greater rationalization if we can, without giving the farmer any costs for worry. He should get as much fertilizer as he wants. But there's also this question of how much is getting pilfered, how much is going into plywood industry or any other industry. But with all that said, I can't afford not to have enough stock of fertilizer. So such uncertainties also make me want to be sure.
If I may, the divestment could have been the route to a conscious attempt to raise equity, which companies do when they're indebted, rather than the borrowing figure is the only suggestion here.
I fully agree, and on divestment we are still working. We shall be doing it. And if at all I'm able to reach that kind of a level even by mid-year, I'll review what my borrowing should be, which is anyway done once again at that stage, before we announce the next half borrowing calendar.
No, so let's spend a moment on asset monetization, because you've now set a target of 80,000 crore rupees for the DIPAM division to be able to monetize government assets, part of it to come from IDBI, which you've announced. What are the kind of timelines you've set for your team to be able to get the IDBI monetization done? And secondly, land monetization of central public sector units. Thirdly, like we saw with Air India, are we now, because you've been working on it for a while, are you now working towards a zone where the government feels confident to be able to push through strategic disinvestment of other central public undertakings which you don't think the government, especially non-strategic areas where you don't think the government needs to be in that business?
First thing, non-strategic areas, strategic areas, that differentiation is gone from 2021. Every sector will have private sector come in.
Sure.
And government's presence in non-core sectors will be to the minimum. In fact, non-core we can be completely out, and core will be to the minimum. So that's made clear. And the 2 kinds, where your holding is already 90%, you can always come down 75, 60, 50. An economic survey said, why don't you come down to 26 now that the voting rights are very clearly demarcated by defining, redefining. I'm not even talking about it at the moment. There's enough and more for me to do in terms of getting public float into some of the public sector undertakings, which are sitting with 92, 98% holding. The other is already cabinet approved items, which will have to be fast tracked on to be totally sold off or privatized. We will continue to honor that approval given by the cabinet. I'll be taking that up. And land monetization, in fact, I'm not sure the report is out yet. Niti Aayog had done a study on land monetization since after the pipelines were announced. And I think the report really finds that quietly a lot of good work has happened. Once those numbers are out for you all to analyze, study, you'll know that the government has been performing even on land monetization. It wasn't as if I announced the pipeline and left it there. Quite a lot of work has happened, and I'm glad Niti Aayog has come up with the report.
Okay, I'm going to get Rahul Bhatia of Maruti Suzuki to ask a question. Can we have a mic sent across to him, please?
Honorable Finance Minister, I have to really compliment, and I go back to the GST landmark reform, a historic reform where you had made a remark, virtuous cycle of growth. I can tell you from industry side that we are actually seeing that happen. We have to accelerate our capex cycle in order to create more capacity to meet the demand that has been created, and it's a phenomenal jump growth rate. The second part is...
So question please.
I'm sorry. I'll still dwell for... Okay. The budget, we are in a rare Goldilocks situation, which we say high growth, low inflation, and coupled with this virtuous cycle of growth. What is the downside that you see now? What are the risks? I mean, we can see everything positive from here on. What risks should we be concerned about now?
Risk is the external challenges. But equally, I would, since you are asking and you're from Maruti, I would say this. India's private sector should participate in India's growth. No longer any other reason can be given as a valid reason, because if there is more reason, let me know. And if government is a hindrance, I'll work to remove it. But come on, participate in India's growth.
Why do you think it's not happening? Because this question's been engaging you. We've had multiple conversations last several years.
This question is engaging me is a wrong thing to say. It's not a question for me in the first place.
Why is manufacturing and capex
There we go.
not...
He asked the question to me.
Yes.
Ask it to the industry. That is a question for them.
What do you find
All
out?
of us are giving our observations about it. It's for industry now to say, no, sorry, we cannot do it because A, B, C of the policy is hitting me. I'll work to remove it. But tell me what's the reason.
What's your theory of what
I have no speculations to offer.
नहीं कुछ
That's
तो
a
होगा ना जो
luxury
आपके सामने
media can
बोलते हैं
engage
इतना
in.
अच्छा हुआ सब अच्छा हुआ, they don't invest in the same way.
It's your luxury to speculate. I have no reasons to speculate.
Interesting. Okay, but she sent a very strong message, so I hope everyone's listening. I'm going to get Neeraj Shah to ask a question. Neeraj, go for it.
Ma'am, good evening. One of the things that the markets has lauded in the budget is this tax holiday for data centers. I was wondering if there is a thought of, if this attempt succeeds, to have more sectors in order to attract FDI, or is this a one-off because it's got some AI connection?
Well, nothing is one-off. They're all part and parcel of a larger scheme of making India more investor-friendly, making India more manufacturer-friendly, and so on. So we'll keep doing this.
But this was a landmark, sorry, which is what I was asking. 22 years is a landmark.
You wanted big-ticket announcements. You wanted things to be done in a big way.
What are your calculations on the impact of this announcement on the tax holiday for cloud services and data centers as a spur for future investment over and beyond what's on the horizon at this moment? How many more data center projects do you think can potentially come to India? And the fact that data centers are huge energy guzzlers and therefore it requires a massive spur in investment on energy production, which is something which is one part of this data center equation which doesn't seem to have been addressed, at least from what we can see in the
Since
public.
the last budget, we've been talking about the small modular reactors. The Parliament is passing bills which are necessary for establishing nuclear energy in India. The push for renewables still continue. We have also given a lot of announcements about pumped storage, which is also green. And therefore, the emphasis on making India energy self-sufficient is in place, and we are doing everything it takes to make sure that we are able to produce more.
No, so to what extent can it be a spur for?
I won't.
You must have done some
calculations.
calculations, you have done some modeling
Yes.
before you make that announcement. What does that modeling look like?
It
in
looks
terms
very
of-
good.
Okay, looks very good. I'm going to get Nisha Poddar to ask a question. Go for it, Nisha.
Good evening, ma'am. So since it's your 9th budget and there is continuity in the vision which the business community really likes, I can ask you about the previous budgets and some of the announcements made there. Job creation is one of the pain points and could be a bigger issue going forward. 2 budgets back, you had announced a stipend program along with the private sector, with top 50, 100 companies really participating in it. I tried to reach out to some of those companies to get the data on what has really happened there, but I was not successful in that. If there can be an update and how the job creation and skill development is really taking shape under that particular program that you had announced. Thank you.
That was the internship program. That was not a jobs program. The data on the internship program has been several times answered. In fact, even tomorrow, I've got questions on the internship program for which I'm giving answers. Last Monday too, last Tuesday too, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So internship is one of those on which we have shared the information with the parliamentarians and also put it out in our website. So there were 2 pilot programs for the internship. And from the pilot, we've had quite a few learnings. And based on that, a cabinet note is being prepared. It's almost ready. It should get the cabinet approval for the full program to be launched with as much allocation as it requires. So, any case, that was only an internship scheme. It was not a job scheme. But to my surprise, many of the companies chose those interns for whom they had created space and given them the opportunity to know about the company into their regular employee list. So it has actually turned out to be not just an exposure for those who have never seen what the big industries want of a person who's seeking job to be an intern, and post which for them to find a job in the company itself. I'm not saying everybody found it in every places that they went, but many of them had the internship getting converted to a job.
Dr. Farooq Patel has a question. Please go for it. Can I have a mic brought up, please? Question, sir.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Farooq Patel and from the KP Group. See, after these few days, government had a very nice deal with the EU and the trade deal and of course, with the Trump, Saab and all. So, opportunity of export is highly expanded nowadays. In that case, our group is in renewable energy, and what we are watching the neighboring countries, our competitor. So if we want to go to outside and do some development outside the India, so how your Indian bank will support us, and how the insurance of India will support us, and the government will, how they will come into the agreement to make sure and secure our investment outside the India, like Africa and all.
See, in very many countries, we have a bilateral investment treaty signed. There are some countries with whom the negotiations are going on. So for Indian investors who go abroad and invest, the best way is if there is a bilateral investment treaty, you're getting covered. Even otherwise, project exports or investments abroad can also benefit, because if there is an agreement between the 2 countries, not really investment protection, but tax avoidance or tax evasion. You have the double taxation avoidance agreement with many countries, like we have it with all the 27 countries in European Union. We have it also with many other countries other than European Union. That also helps you because there's a clarity on where you pay the tax, how much do you pay, what happens if you don't pay it in one place and you pay it on the other place, and so on. These are the broad ways in which the government also, through its embassy, helps our investors who are outside. These are specific ones which I've mentioned. They can be separate understanding between one country and another through a bilateral, some other agreement, not investment protection, and so on. But it depends on the country you're going to.
Okay, General Messner has a question on defense spending and on the defense budget. Go for it, sir.
Ma'am, good evening. Rather not on defense spending. My question is, ma'am, this time Chabar port, no allotment has been made in the budget. It is of great strategic significance in terms of security and economic interest to India. Even now, President Trump is putting a lot of pressure on India. So how are we going to maintain our national interest by retaining our flexibility and, of course, whatever investment, I think $120 million we have made, how do we retain a hold in Chabar port because of the north-south corridor also? Thank you.
Yes, you're right. There's not been any allocation, but I understand the importance of Chabhar. The north-south transit route was also linked to that, going up to Moscow through the Central Asian republics. And also it became linked to the rail corridor as well. At the moment, this is all I can say. I'm sure, are you an ex-serviceman? You seem
Yes,
like one.
yes, of course.
You seem like one and...
Seem like one. That's a compliment. That's a compliment, General Master.
But you'll understand if I can't say anything more beyond this.
Okay, I'm going to get Alex Matthew to ask the question. Go for it, Alex.
From the perspective of ease of compliance on the payment of tax, a lot of work has already been done. The nudges that the tax department has sent to individuals has also worked, and you've created windows. My question to you, ma'am, is will we see more of use of data, which has gotten a lot more robust? Will more such notices be sent out to correct behavior? I'm talking about collection of revenue in the right manner on taxes that are supposed to be paid, that are going out through loopholes in the system.
Yes, of course, data will be used. And nudge will be our modus. We also want to help the assessee by pre-filling his forms. Because most often we find assessees miss out on declaring some things. When you pre-fill it, they understand you've got the information. Some of them are very honest enough to immediately admit, saying, oh yes, that was a miss from my side. So we will be adopting these methods so that our collection efficiency improves.
I'm going to get Nasir Salim from Flexi Capital to ask a question. Go for it.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Rahul. Good evening, Finance Minister. Just a quick question. You know, I represent the wealth management industry and the mutual fund industry broadly. The question is, today's SIP book in the country is a huge 30,000 crores per month. Adds a lot of capital market value every month. Our question is, any vision that you have, possibly on the last man standing in terms of financial inclusion, Finance Minister? What can we do better to take this to the last man standing in the line in terms of inclusion?
I think you have done well, much to the surprise of many who still believe small savings is the only way Indian householder can keep his savings safe. But I think the way in which the mutual fund industry and the wealth managers have shown that it is possible to earn with a bit of a risk, but sumptuous amounts, even for the retail savings person, retail investor who's come into the market. It has surprised a lot of global investors as well, because even with all the fund flows going out, our markets have survived on the back of the retail investor. I think greater investor education is important to build awareness about how effectively even a retail investor earns from the markets. Because it's not just anymore talking about risks in the market. Because of good governance, board-driven governance, reportage, and also because the MCA's website is available for people to see if all the reporting which is being heard and spoken about is true or not. You're able to cross-check on the annual returns that the companies are filing. And therefore today the awareness among general public is very good, but we need to strengthen that with greater confidence building mechanisms, which only industry can do, which only businesses and market players can do. And I think therefore the wealth managers will also have to come every now and then.
Fiscal prudence India has shown, our fiscal deficit is lower. RBI has cut rates by 125 basis points. The capital market, the bond market is not showing enough transmission. So let's say a 20-year government bond is the same rate, so government is borrowing the same rate, I am borrowing a rate. My home loan is 7.1. So something is off here, and that is not leading to transmission. Could India also consider, like West, a change in the tenure? So our weighted average cost of capital is 7.3, 7.4, which is way high for somebody who's doing such a good job on fiscal prudence. Can we reduce the tenure from 13, 14 years to 7, 8 years? A little bit more clarity on, let's say, OMO calendar. I think somewhere this is rubbing off even on the equity market also. So if some thoughts can be done there.
Yeah, sure. I agree with you, but I can't really speak on what exactly I'm doing because
This is the best time to do it. What better than being live on NDTV Profit and telling us what you're doing? That's the whole idea of
Rahul,
having
that
you.
question will immediately spike up or spike down the market. And tomorrow you will say the headlines that NDTV gave made the, market go volatile and so many people have lost or so many people have gained and thrash me again on it.
No.
I'd
we
rather
won't
say
thrash
when
you.
I'm ready.
Will we thrash her? Not at all. We won't do that at all. Aap aaram se jawab de do, no problem.
Oh, thank you.
See, we tried. At least we tried. That's all that we can do. So we'll wrap up here. We've had an absolutely fantastic town hall with the finance minister. We saw, not just your prudence when it comes to financial management. We saw some political flourish as well. And as you head into Tamil Nadu, I'm sure we'll get to see a lot more of that. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a very warm round of applause as I thank Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman for joining us on the NDTV network and being part of this. Thank you very much, ma'am. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Thank you.